Hello, I'm in Sydney, if it looks different today. Today, I'm going to show you 10 essential Notion formulas that, with a little help to learn, will transform the power and pleasure of using Notion to organise your life. Formulas were by far the most intimidating Notion feature when I was getting started, but I think you'll be surprised how accessible these ones are, even for a Notion beginner, from simple overdue reminders to creating beautiful report views in Notion. Stick around to the end for those. These are my top Notion formulas that were the most key features to creating my Notion setup and my Notion Life OS, a complete second brain template that has become my personal productivity system for staying organized. Check it out via the link in the description if you're new here. And thank you to Brilliant, another wonderful learning platform, for sponsoring this video. First up, Notion formulas are used by creating a property in a database, and then you select the formula option. You can reference other properties or columns by either selecting them from the list in the formula view or by writing prop, open brackets, column name in parentheses, and then closing the brackets. And of course, you can do a load of other things. Let's take a look. So the first formula example is simple calculations. Doing simple calculations is a great place to start messing with formulas in Notion. I suggest you set up a simple database and create some number columns in it. For example, you might call that income and outgoings. Maybe they are totals that roll up from another database, and do a sum of that. Either way, add a formula column and then try calculating a sum by referencing those other two columns. For example, things like a balance for profit versus loss could be something like this. I propose total income, either written or referenced, minus total outgoings. Simple as that. But mess around with these like you would with something like Excel and see what's possible. You can multiply, divide, and so on. And Notion have some great guides to formulas if you want support beyond what we're doing here on their website. So next, 3 great date formulas. These are fantastic for automated reminders, like setting project pages in a database to remind you to review them, or maybe for calculating a date relative to another, like a repeating entry. Here are some great examples to mess with. So DateAdd and DateSubtract. This adds or subtracts from a date to return a date in relation to it. It would read as this. You put DateAdd, open the brackets, and then you want to put a date and an amount and then text. Now that would be the date, how many instances from it, and in what days, months, years. My favorite instance of this is to do a weekly review, something like my new review due column in my projects page. So first I create a date column called last review, and then a number column called frequency, that's the number. And then I can set a formula that returns a date times the number of days on from that last review date, and then finally say the number of units. So that would read DateAdd, prop last review, then I put a comma, prop review frequency, that's the amount, and then another comma, and then days, and close the brackets. That's the unit or the text. There you go. Date, last review, amount, review frequency, and days is the text it returns. To check a formula works, just make sure that the blue done button shows up. If it doesn't go blue, you've missed something. Maybe you've missed a comma, or you haven't put the title of a column correctly into the proposition. Number 3 is FormatDate. You can also create a formatted report to return different articulations of a date using FormatDate in a wider formula. So why don't we add a day of the week into a column from a date we already have generated? For example, we would do FormatDate and then propose the due date of my tasks, and then I would close the brackets on that, comma, and then I'm going to do 4 Ds to create a full day, which is essentially the formatting of what it returns. And this is great for reports. There's many ways you could do this. Just mess around with the different options, the days, months, quarters, years. There are loads of ways to format it, and you can play with it. Patterns could be anything from days, months, quarters, years. You could use a day, then add the month and the year to get a full date. Check out Notion's website for more details on what you can do. Now, number 4 is DateBetween. Now, using a DateBetween formula is a great way of calculating the number of units between 2 dates, such as let's say maybe a target for completing a habit and when you start it. So a good example is how many days you want to do a habit for. The simplest would be to create a start date and an end date column in a database, and then add a formula column to calculate the distance between them. And that would be something like this: date between, open the brackets, end date, comma, proposed start date, comma, in days. And so it works the same as the DateAdd or DateSubtract. And finally on dates, number 5 is the now formula. This is really powerful. Now, open brackets, close brackets. It's a great one to remember. Maybe you want to calculate the days passed since the start date. Adding now and then open and close brackets as a reference to a formula column will return the time and date that is right now. So then we can change our formula to calculate the date between now and some point we started, see how long we've been doing something. That would be date between now, open brackets, close brackets, comma, start date, proposition, and then in days and close the brackets. Before we look at the 2 most powerful and satisfying Notion formulas I know, let's talk about the tech world. These days, if you don't know AI or code, you might feel a little behind the curve. But even if you're like me and not a data scientist or software engineer, you can still get an edge in your career by boosting your maths, data, and computer science skills, and the best place to do this is brilliant.org. I reckon Brilliant is one of the best ways to learn maths and computer science interactively, with thousands of lessons from foundational maths to AI and computer science, with new lessons added monthly, which is really cool. I'm currently doing the Computer Science Fundamentals course. As someone creating no-code templates, understanding the basics of how computers work and code is a great way to then move on to more advanced algorithms, and it's a fantastic way to improve my own thinking on how to set up systems in my Notion setup. I love the hands-on learning process. It's simple to use, and you can do bite-sized chunks, so you can master whole topics in quick sessions. It's a low-pressure way of becoming a student. Again, it's fun, and whilst I'm skilling up, I'm also learning new ways of thinking. I also really like the visual examples and explanations around the questions that they create, and what's really cool is you're not just memorizing formulas or equations, it works on your intuition. So when I see a problem in my work now, I'll have a tool to solve it. That, my friend, is a superpower. So definitely give Brilliant a try. The best thing is you can try it for free for a full 30 days. Just visit brilliant.org/bettercreating or use the link in the description. And the first 200 of you to use it will get 20% off Brilliant's annual premium subscription. Thanks Brilliant for sponsoring this part of the video. Now, the if statement. It's a classic and probably the most powerful Notion formula, the first one you can learn for organizing information. This is to test if the first expression you add is true, and based on that, return something else. So that might be something like this. If, propose, a due date is greater than now, make it true, otherwise false. Now that one, adding true and false into the formula, creates a lovely checkbox that you can then filter a database by. And you can take this further by using more specific options such as equals or larger equals to test if something is equal or not, or if one is larger or equal to something else. But my favorite is to use an if statement for reporting on database items. So here's an example, the empty formula. Combining an if statement with other formula items is a super powerful way of checking if something is empty, for example. So I would do a report on my project's next review date, which we created earlier. So we would do if, brackets, empty, brackets, and then from here we would put in next review due from my database, and then we would do no review date set as a piece of text. That's what it's going to report back. And then we would do a comma. Otherwise, essentially that means propose next review due. So that essentially means that if next review due is empty, it's going to put this text report into the block. Otherwise, it's going to give me the next review date. And that means that you can then show a date if there is one, or have a report saying there isn't anything set. Now that's all very cool and all, but on board views or gallery views or even calendars, when the date is shown from something like that formula, it's just a date. We don't know what it's talking about. Well, that's what leads us to my favorite formula of them all, and that is the Concat formula. I love the Concat formula because of the improvements it can offer in how you view information in Notion. Now, a Concat formula concatenates or combines text strings together. This means that you can reformat information from other columns into a single line of text. I like these for creating, as I say, report views in galleries or calendars, whatever. Now here are my favorites and how to use Concat. For example, we might turn our overdue formula into a more visually pleasing report. So for my Concat report, I'm going to put it in here, and I want to turn this next review date into a written text so that we can then see, rather than just see the date, we can see a report. An example of what I mean is this. It says in projects, review due April 14th, right? So to do that, I'm going to go in here and we're going to go Concat, open the brackets, and then I want to start with text, and I'm going to put next review due. I'm leaving a space after it and closing the parentheses. That space will be useful for how it writes it out. Then we can do comma. I want to put in next review due. However, and then I want to close the brackets, but it doesn't work, and that is because this is a number and we need to turn it into text. So all we now need to do is add in here the other really cool thing, which is format. Open brackets is a great little tool to drop into Concat formulas to create more complex Concat reports. Essentially what it will do is format something like a number or a date into text. So if I do format and open the brackets there, and then again add one final set of brackets, it will work. So it has essentially formatted what is a number column into text. There you go. And that are two really powerful things. Concat, to take text and something else and put them together, and format, which will format anything which is a number or a date into text. And as you can see, you just do it in sections. So if I remove format and remove the commas, you need to add format to the section, open the brackets, and then close the brackets on the whole section again, and it works. So there you go, we now have next review due May 17th. And in that, if you wanted to, you could easily also insert an emoji. Let's just say it was this, put a little image in there as well, and you get a nice kind of visual dot or whatever you want in there. Pretty cool. But my favorite use case for Concats is absolutely to combine it with an if statement. Yeah, this will essentially create really powerful reports across two columns. So you're using one Concat to feed into a second using an if statement. And yes, if you really want to take it further to the next level, try this cool double Concat column Concat view. So this is the combination of those two things. I'm going to use this Concat and create a new one that is a final report, and that would do this. So we're going to go if due report is equals no review date set, return due report, otherwise return the Concat report that we've created. Close the brackets, and we need to get a little gap there, and we missed a comma there. There you go. So if the due report is equals this detail here, then return it, otherwise give us the Concat report. And that means we now get either no review date set or next review due. So if we look at that in my actual example, but that's how you get these lovely reporting views within here. And you know, I've got a ton of examples of this in things like my CRM. If you want to consider going much further, it gets pretty complex if you want to, but the principles are the same. And of course, all of that is in my Life OS. If you want to check that out online, do so. Wow, it's raining really hard in Sydney. Well now, to go further with honing your ultimate Notion workspace, check out my complete Notion Life OS tour video next for some inspiration and a full tour of my ultimate second brain setup as a template and a system to get you going. Or watch this one next for more on the productivity hacks that can truly make your life easier this year. It would be awesome if you left a comment, amazing if you subscribed, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.